Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a jaw-dropping story to share with you. Last year, Father's Day started like any other. I was always the first one awake, never being able to sleep in, so I knew it would be a while before my wife of 18 years and my 18 and 17-year-old girls would wake up and join me. Each year for Mother's Day, I would make my wife a nice breakfast complete with mimosas. For lunch, I'd make her a cheese, fruit, and nut plate with a bottle of good white wine. For dinner, I'd grill her favorite dinner of steak and baked potato, paired with a good Cabernet Sauvignon. When the girls were younger, they would help with breakfast and the obligatory waiting on mom hand and foot, but as they grew into their teens, I was left on my own for the spoiling. No big deal. My wife usually reciprocated by making me a special breakfast, although I grilled the steaks for dinner on Father's Day. So last year on Father's Day, I waited for my wife to wake up to make me breakfast, which never happens any other day of the year. She doesn't know it, but I usually eat something small when I wake around 6. I'd be starving if I didn't eat until she woke around 9, which is early for her on a weekend. When she woke, she kissed me, wished me a happy Dad's Day, and began to make a special breakfast for the family. For lunch, we went to a kitschy little Doctor Who-themed sandwich cafe, and all in all, it was a good day. My wife is a slave to the calendar and knows when all of the important dates fall. She manages everything from holidays down to the kids' activities with a dry erase calendar hanging on the side of a cabinet in the kitchen. Every holiday, Hallmark holiday, school event, half day, etc., get written on the calendar. Nothing ever gets missed. Except when I miss something, of course. The following year, as my wife wrote in the dates on the calendar at the end of May, she said, "Hey Bill, your birthday falls on Father's Day this year." It wasn't the first time it had happened, so I wasn't surprised. I said, "Sweet, don't skimp and cheat me out of getting 2 gifts." Katie replied with a laugh, "You'd never let me live it down if you got cheated out of a present. I'll have to do something extra special for you this year." The weeks leading up to my big day were strange in our house. My wife was acting oddly by working late, snapping at me and the girls for little things, and dressing up more for work. She was a bake shop manager at our local grocery store. She never wore makeup to work before, but she started to do so around that time. She also wore a smock over her clothes, which consisted of a button-down white dress shirt and slacks. She'd been leaving an additional button undone, which showed off more of her ample cleavage. I began to question things when she went out without me the Friday before my birthday. We went out quite a bit together with a core group of married couples, so she rarely went out with the girls on her own. If someone was going out for drinks and invited her along, she'd let me know where and I'd meet up with them. It wasn't as if I was an ogre and wouldn't let her do things on her own. She always said she enjoyed the time more if I were with her. It made me feel good, and I thought we had a pretty strong marriage because of little things like that. For my part, I didn't do much outside of our social circle without her either. It just worked for us. We weren't party people or big drinkers. Our idea of a nice Friday night was to cuddle together on the couch and watch a movie or two together. That's why I was surprised to see her walk downstairs that Friday, dressed to kill. She was wearing a new short skirt, nude stockings, and high heels. She also had rather obviously been to the tanning salon and got her hair done. I whistled at her and asked, "Crap, honey, did I forget about us going out? Let me get dressed real quick." "No, Bill, I'm going out with some people from work." "I figured you could order a pizza for yourself since our girls are also going out." I was shocked. She never mentioned it, and it wasn't on her precious calendar. "Oh? You didn't tell me you had plans?" "I figured we'd catch up on our shows tonight." A look of fear crossed her beautiful face, and then she caught herself and softened. "Sorry, baby. I was just asked today." I made it clear that I looked her up and down and said, "So, you just found out today, and in the hour you were off work before me, you bought a new skirt, went tanning, and got your hair done." I was getting angry. She was lying to me, but I couldn't prove it. I couldn't believe she would be cheating on me. It wasn't in her character to do that. She was the epitome of the suburban soccer mom wife and mother. Our sex life was great. We still made love several times a week. There was no reason for her to cheat on me. She snapped at me. "I worked a half day today. I wanted to look nice for a change." Before I could respond, she walked out the door without another word, leaving me wondering what the hell happened. I waited up for her, and she came home just before midnight. Her hair wasn't down anymore. It was pulled back into her normal ponytail. So much for getting her hair done. She walked past me without a word and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the shower going. All I could do was shake my head and wonder what she'd done that required a shower before bed. She didn't come down, and she didn't say goodnight before she went to bed. I knew something was very wrong in my perfect little world. I wondered just how wrong it was. I work in retail management, so I worked the following Saturday morning. Normally, my getting ready for the day would wake her, and she would kiss me goodbye before going back to sleep. That morning I got nothing. Again, I was shocked. When I got to the store, I saw Missy waiting by the entrance. Missy was the morning barista at the coffee shop in our big box store. She was a cute redhead whose blue eyes were striking. As happily married as I was, I couldn't help but notice her. I always had a thing for redheads. "Hey, Bill," she called out as I walked up to the entrance. It was still locked as we had a half hour before the store opened. The night crew guys could have let her in, but as she told me once before, she didn't feel comfortable alone in the store with a bunch of guys. "Good morning, Missy," I said as I opened the doors for us. "What happened, Bill? You look like somebody killed your cat." "Sorry, I've got a lot on my mind today." She looked at me strangely, but let it go. "Give me a few minutes and I'll pour you a cup of our finest." I forced a smile and said, "Sounds good. I'll see you shortly." I locked the doors as she rushed off to prepare the cafe for the morning rush. I knew that she would be very busy as soon as the store opened. The mornings always were for our little coffee shop. I checked in with the crews that were preparing their departments as I walked the floor. I always did a walkthrough in the morning. It wasn't necessary as I had a really good team of department managers, but it gave me a chance to say hello and make some small talk. I felt it was important to have a good rapport with my team members, and I think they appreciated the effort. The last stop on my walkabout was the coffee shop where Missy had my large black coffee waiting. "Here you go, boss. 1 cup of Megamart's finest brew." "Thanks, Missy." I set down $2 on the counter. "No, Bill, it's on the house today." "No way, Missy. I pay for everything here. The last thing I need is someone getting mad at me and calling corporate to rat me out." She gasped. "Bill, I'd never." "I didn't mean you, Missy. I can't take the chance, even for a $2 coffee. You'd be surprised the kind of things I have to put up with if I deny a day off for someone or their overtime gets cut. It's just not smart." "Okay, boss. Fair enough." I waved goodbye and sipped my brew. I'm sure some of the employees got free coffee now and then. There's no real way to track it, and honestly, who'd want to? It's way too much work over cheap coffee. I couldn't imagine watching hours of video to see if everyone paid. It was different for me. Being a top dog carried its own risks. Employees would get mad over the dumbest things. I'd had HR called on me because I enforced our employee parking policy. Seriously, calling HR over having to park in the back of the lot. Ridiculous. The day ended and was rather uneventful. My biggest excitement was an old lady stealing cat food and birdseed. It was just the kind of day I needed. I was busy enough that I wasn't stewing over my newfound issues with my wife, but not so busy that I couldn't get everything done on time. When I walked in the door at home, my wife and daughters were walking out. For a moment I was surprised, but looked at the calendar. "Bye, Daddy," my daughters each said as they kissed my cheek goodbye. My loving wife said nothing. They were going to a concert with some of the other moms and daughters. It had been planned for a while and was on the calendar. As usual for me, I forgot. I had hoped I would get a chance to talk with Katie and get to the bottom of what was happening. I hated not knowing what she did the night before. After not thinking about it all day, I had nothing to do but dwell on it that night. I took the opportunity to do some snooping. I checked her email but figured it would be a bust, and it was. No one sent emails anymore. She had her phone, so I couldn't check her texts and call log, so I went to the hamper to check her clothes from the night before, but as it was Saturday, she'd done laundry. I got nowhere, and after watching a movie, I went to bed feeling no better about my marriage than before. I woke up on my birthday/Father's Day combo and did the usual start to my day. I had a couple of pieces of toast and some coffee and sat outside on my patio to enjoy the morning. It was a gorgeous day, and I enjoyed the sounds of the birds chirping and wondered what was in store for my special day. Around 9, I walked inside to refill my coffee and was surprised to see my wife and daughters up and packing a lunch. "What's going on?" I asked, wondering why they didn't have me getting ready to go somewhere. My daughter Jill said, "We're going to the beach." "Oh," I said, and walked upstairs to get dressed for the lake. As I was putting on my shirt, I heard my daughter Jenny shout, "Bye, Daddy, see you later." The door shut, and I looked out the window to see my wife and daughters drive away. I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't expect the girls to remember my birthday. I had to remind them about their mother's birthday and Mother's Day, but I couldn't understand Katie not remembering. I walked downstairs dejected and heard my cell ring. I rushed over, hoping they realized it and were going to tell me they would be back for me, but no, it was my mom. "Hey Billy, happy birthday and Father's Day." "Thanks, Mom. Does Katie have big plans for you guys today?" "Nope. She took the girls to the beach a few minutes ago." "Really? That's not like her. I'd have bet she'd make you a nice breakfast and make it a special day for you." "Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening right now, honestly. She's been acting strangely for a few weeks." "Well, don't fuss about it. She's probably got something special planned for later. I gotta get off to church. Love you, Billy." "Love you, Mom." One had to love my mom. She was an eternal optimist, and she loved Katie like she was her own flesh and blood. She and Katie had regular visits since my dad died a few years before. Katie wanted to make sure Mom wasn't getting too lonely. So there I was, wondering what the hell was happening with my marriage when the phone rang again. It was my assistant manager, and Bill. "We had an incident in the coffee shop this morning." "What happened?" "Missy was on a ladder when she was bumped by a shopper. She lost her balance and fell." "Oh my God. Is she okay?" "She was taken to St. Alex's to get x-rays. She may have a broken arm or something." "Darn, poor girl. Did you get shift coverage?" "Yeah, we're all set. I just didn't want you walking into a surprise tomorrow. Sorry to bother you on Father's Day." "Don't worry about it, and thanks for the call. I hope Missy would be all right." I fumbled around the house for a while and finally decided they weren't coming back, so I went to IHOP for breakfast. It turned out to be a mistake for my state of mind. There was a long wait, and there were families everywhere I looked. Happy families celebrating fathers and grandfathers. I left before I started to tear up. I drove through McDonald's drive-thru and got a big breakfast with coffee and orange juice. The pancakes were surprisingly good as I sat in the park eating with a plastic fork and knife. I looked out over the small lake on which I used to take my girls paddle boating when they were little. They loved the water. Whether it be swimming, boating, or even fishing, they loved to be at a lake. With them being older and almost in college, they lost interest in fishing. I suppose looking back on it, they lost interest in spending any time with me at all. Their outings those days were all with their mother. That's probably rightly so. Shopping for clothes with Dad would, I'm sure, be a drag on a young girl. At 1 in the afternoon, I hadn't heard from my wife. I could only assume there would be no lunch together. I drove to the Doctor Who cafe and ordered a Reuben. Of course, it had a show-related name like Revolution of the Daleks Reuben or something just as silly. Being a 40-year-old man that has no clue what's cool or not, I took a picture and checked in on Facebook. I got the usual likes and Happy Father's Day comments from my friends and associates. Oddly, my mother-in-law commented that she thought I was at the beach with my wife and the girls. It seems my wife was posting beach pictures on her Facebook timeline. I finished my sandwich and went to the sports bar near my house. It had been a while since I watched a ball game, and I figured I'd drown my sorrows at the same time in Miller Lite. The bar was crowded and I wasn't in the mood for that, so I went to the cigar lounge next door and treated myself to a $60 Opus X. Happy birthday to me. I sat down and turned the Sox game on, and a couple of guys playing cards invited me to join them. "I'm Bill," I said, introducing myself to the older gentleman. "I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry." "Nice to meet you both." They finished their hand and dealt me into their little 5-card draw game. "Help yourself, Bill," Lance said, kicking a cooler on the floor. I thanked him and pulled out a Miller Lite. "No kids, or does the ex have him with her new man?" Jerry asked with a smirk. I frowned and said, "My wife and girls are at the beach. It seems they don't know what day it is." "Sucks," Lance added. "I don't see my boys much. Both are the service." Jerry nodded and said, "My baby girl lives in California. My grandson Charlie just turned 2. I'm going out there next week." "That's nice," I said. With my girls being 17 and 18, I've started to miss having little ones running around. They both nodded knowingly. After a while of small talk, somehow we got back on the subject of my wife. "Do you think she really forgot or is avoiding you on purpose?" Jerry asked. That was an excellent question, and something I also had been thinking about. I told them about the last few weeks up to Friday night's issues, and they shook their heads. "She's cheating on you," Lance said. Jerry nodded in agreement. "I can't believe that," I said. As soon as he said it, though, I knew it was the only explanation that made sense, and I was trying to believe she wasn't. "Listen, Bill," Lance said. "I've been through it before. The change in demeanor, the sudden nights out dressed like a slut, the disrespect. I've been there and done that, pal. My wife screwed a coworker a couple of times, and when I found out I divorced her. The biggest mistake I ever made." "What?" I snapped. "She cheated on you. How could divorcing her be a mistake?" In my mind, there was no valid excuse. Cheating was the end of a marriage, plain and simple. Period. End of story. "Bill, I was broke for 5 years paying her alimony and child support. Every day I missed her, loving her from across town in my lonely apartment while she was lonely at my house. She may have cheated on me, but I was too much of a coward to forgive her at the time. It took 7 years, but we got back together. We're happy now." "Jesus," I said. "Giving her body to another man is the biggest insult and disrespect my wife could ever do. If what you're saying is right, and she's having an affair, she either is so caught up in her lover that she forgot my birthday or is blowing me off on purpose. Either way is not acceptable." Lance shook his head. "Bill, trust me. If you truly love her, find a way to forgive her. You'll be better off in the long run. 40-year-old guys don't get second chances at love." "Thanks, Lance. You've given me a lot to think about." That may be what I said, but what I was thinking was that he was nuts. There's no way I could forgive her for having an affair and no way I could stay married to her. I shook both men's hands, wished them well, and left. It was almost dinner time when I was sitting on my couch surfing Facebook. I saw my daughter's and wife's posts with pictures of their happy day and was even more saddened. Screw it, I thought. I needed to man up and quit acting like a lost child. My wife forgot about my birthday. It happens. She forgot Father's Day. Who cares? What matters is, I was certain she cheated on me Friday night, and probably many times over the previous weeks, she was acting strangely. Her rubbing it in my face had to be her endgame. Well, she ended it all right. It was time to prepare for the rest of my life. I decided to go to my favorite restaurant for dinner. I knew there would be a long wait, and that was okay. I had nothing better to do. So I showered, dressed in a sport coat and slacks, and headed out for a steak. I was sitting at the steakhouse bar waiting for a table when an older man sat down in the open spot beside me. He saw my bottle of champagne with one glass and frowned. Thankfully, he didn't say anything. He merely ordered a martini. As the bartender refilled my glass, I guess the man couldn't help himself and asked, "Celebrating alone, or did I take someone's seat?" "No," I said, "you're fine. I'm here alone." He nodded and sipped his drink. He must have been in sales because he couldn't sit quietly. He said, "Yeah, I'm waiting on my 3 generations of Red Fury. My wife is helping my daughter, who broke her arm today. I guess she's not handling having to do things with her left hand very well." He laughed and continued, "You just don't expect your adult children to break bones." I thought those days were behind me. I agreed with his sentiment and nodded. Looks like I'll be cooking for myself for a few weeks. My wife is going to have to take care of Missy and Mia and leave me on my own. My head snapped up. "What did you say?" Before he could answer, a little girl shrieked, "Grandpa," from across the room and dashed through the crowded bar. A little flop of red curls jumped onto his lap and lavished the man with hugs and kisses. A moment later, I heard Bill. I turned and saw Missy and who I presumed to be her mother standing next to me. Her mother was her spitting image, except for a few lines around the eyes. They looked exactly alike. "Hi, Missy. How's your arm?" "It's okay. I'm on some strong pain meds, so I'm not feeling much. It hurt like hell when they said it though. Missy introduced her parents Jack and Mary to me, and then her adorable little girl Mia. Where's your wife, Bill? She asked. Don't know. She took my girls to the beach this morning and I haven't heard from them all day. Seriously? On Father's Day? Worse than that, it's also my birthday today. Oh my god. Did she blow you off on the best day of the year for you? What's her problem? I didn't want to get into it and said more than I probably should have already, so I shrugged my shoulders. Well, forget her. You must join us, Mary said emphatically. I could see what Jack meant with his red fury comment. I don't. Forget it, Bill. You don't want them ganging up on you. It isn't pretty, Jack said with a snicker that showed his years of experience with being ganged up on by them. But it's your day, Jack. I don't want to intrude. BS, he said. It's our day. Grandpa, you said. I know, pumpkin. I said a bad word. Grandma will punish me later. Dad. He winked at me as the buzzer for their table went off. Settle up your tab, Bill, and meet us at our table. No bailing on us, he said with the tone of a drill instructor. He threw a 20 on the bar and walked off. Sorry, Bill. My parents can be bullheaded. No worries, Missy. I suppose it's better than eating alone. The dinner conversation was light. Bill and I told stories of our daughters growing up, and Mia asked a lot of questions. She giggled constantly at the embarrassing tales of her mom as a child. After dinner, my phone rang. I saw it was my wife and ignored the call and set the phone on the table. Your wife? Mary asked. Yes. It's more than you're letting on, isn't it? Missy asked. I think so, but I have no proof. Bill, everyone makes mistakes, Mary said, looking directly at Jack. Maybe you can find a way to forgive her. Missy's head snapped over and she glared at Mary. I called the waiter over and handed him my credit card. Well, I've destroyed enough of your meeting. Thank you for inviting me to share your meal. Bill, let me. No, Jack. It was my honor to eat with you, and especially one of my favorite employees. It's on me. Happy Father's Day. I shook their hands and walked over to the waiter's station to sign the check. I didn't even have solid proof she was cheating on me, but I was 2 for 2 with people telling me I should forgive her. What was wrong with people? My phone rang again and again. I ignored it. I pulled into my garage and was greeted by 2 whirling dervishes bestowing kisses and hugs, apologizing profusely for abandoning me on Father's Day. Girls, don't worry about it. I don't expect you to remember when my birthday is. It's your birthday? Screamed Jill. Then she ran into the house screaming at my wife. Daddy, we didn't know. I'm so sorry, she sobbed into my chest. You must hate us. No, baby. I love you more than life itself. When she asked us last night to go to the beach today, we just jumped at the chance. We didn't think. Baby, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not mad at you. I didn't tell her I was mad at her mother, but that was my problem, not my daughter's. Let's get inside. I walked through the kitchen, ignored my crying wife getting scolded by my daughters, and went up to change clothes. After putting on shorts and a tank top, I walked back through the war zone to find my wife sobbing alone. I'm so sorry, she mumbled. I shook my head and walked out to my deck with a beer and a cigar. It was a beautiful night, and I was enjoying the tranquility, thinking about work instead of my wife for a change, when the sliding door opened. Bill, what's his name? I asked, cutting her off. I didn't look at her, and she didn't walk any farther out onto the deck. Bill. What is his name? The man you screwed on Friday. My anger was rising. I heard the door close, but she didn't come out. She didn't bother denying it. I knew then I'd be visiting a divorce lawyer soon. Almost 20 years of marriage down the drain. What a stupid woman I married. That's when my mind started thinking the worst. How long had she been cheating? Was he her first? Did I know him? Were the girls even mine? It's amazing what negative thoughts go through your mind when you're treated so poorly. I decided to demand paternity tests on the girls as part of the divorce. It wouldn't be just for my peace of mind, but would also cause Katie embarrassment. I spent the rest of the night searching divorce laws on the internet before sleeping on the sofa. What a way to spend my birthday. I woke first at a gloomy 5 in the morning. In my bedroom, I found Katie sleeping soundly, curled up around my pillow. It was funny how peaceful she looked, as opposed to how poorly I slept. She was so beautiful. It was too bad she wasn't mine any longer. I would miss her body. I grabbed what I needed to wear and showered as quickly as I could. I managed to escape without waking her, but Jill was waiting for me in the hallway. How bad is it, Daddy? I sighed. It's as bad as it gets. Can you forgive her? I mean, it's just forgetting a day. Honey, she didn't just forget my birthday or Father's Day. She cheated on me. She gasped. No, Dad. She wouldn't. She must have, and I won't accept it. Think about it. She's been acting oddly for the last few weeks. Friday night, she went out dressed revealing after getting a tan and her hair done. That certainly wasn't for me. She shook her head. Baby, she avoided me all day Saturday and Sunday. She was obviously feeling either guilt or hatred for me and didn't want to be around me at all. When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? That's always a family excursion. What if it's not an affair? What if it was only once? Can't you forgive her for just one time? I doubt it was, honey, but look at all of her actions. At any point this weekend, did she act as she loved me? Daddy, you didn't see the look on her face when Grandma called her to ask why she didn't call Grandpa and wish him a happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and shrieked, no. So loudly. We thought Grandpa had a heart attack or something. He sloughs. He's fine, Dad. Mom sobbed on her knees until we picked her up and sat her on the couch. She just kept saying she loved you over and over again. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. She thought she was having a breakdown. We calmed her and were able to get her to call you. Jill, I don't know what you expect me to say. She doesn't love me. One can't cheat on their spouse and love them. That's not an action of love. It's selfishness. Love is supposed to be selfless. When she became intimate with another man, she cast me aside. She hugged me and cried. I'm going to assume it wasn't some random guy she picked up in a bar. She had to have been flirting or accepting him flirting with her. There would be intimate touches, maybe some kissing and fondling, all leading up to the first time she had sex with him. All of those actions before the sex are betraying your spouse. You cannot be in love with someone and show someone else intimate affection. Please don't divorce her. I have to go to work now. We'll talk later. She walked into Jenny's room. I'm sure to fill her in on what we talked about. There wouldn't be any more secrets in our family. I wondered how much longer we would be a family. I knew Katie would be too busy at work to try to call me or text me, so I had some peace for most of the day. The only thing that made it not a normal day was completing the forms for corporate related to Missy's accident. She would get workman's comp for her time off, and I hoped she wouldn't struggle too much. I didn't know anything about her personal life other than knowing she wasn't married. She came in to sign the forms and complete her accident report. I wrote it out for her, as she was not doing well with her left hand, and she signed it. How are things at home? She asked. Not good. She didn't deny it when I confronted her about her affair. Darn, Bill. I'm sorry. I'm sure you don't want to know my life story, but I do know how you feel. My ex-husband cheated on me while I was pregnant. I kicked him out before my daughter was even born. My mom was furious with me. She basically called me a quitter. Jesus, I thought it was odd when your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night. She was looking right at your father when she said it. Yeah, I noticed that as well. I'm not sure which one it was, but it makes me think one of them cheated. I'm sorry. Done it be. They seem to be happy, so they are free to live how they choose. I choose to never trust a cheater. Me too, I said firmly. Katie wasn't home when I got home from work. She was probably screwing her stud, and I got pissed off. I got back into my car and drove the 2 miles to her grocery store. I saw her car in the parking lot, and to my surprise, she was sitting in it with a young man. When I stopped in front of her car, she noticed me and I could see her scream, no. She opened the door, but I drove off. If she was going to cheat on me, he could have her. I was done. I drove home and ran upstairs to pack a bag. I planned on staying in a hotel until I found an apartment. Before I knew it, Jenny and Jill were crying and begging me to stay. I'm sorry, girls, but your mother was just on her way to cheat on me when I caught her. She was in the car with some guy when I pulled up to her. Daddy, there has to be a mistake. Girls, I know what I saw. She had a man in her car. Why would she stay after work and have a man in her car if she wasn't going to take him somewhere? She can't say they were just eating lunch. There is no innocent explanation for sitting in the back of the parking lot after work with a man in her car. Dad, please don't break up our family. Jenny sobbed. Honey, your mother broke up our family. This is not my fault. I pulled them into a group hug and kissed their cheeks. I love you girls. I'll be in touch every day. I left them crying in the bedroom as I walked to the garage. As I pulled out, I almost got hit by Katie pulling in like a bat out of hell. I shook my head and drove on. The next week was nothing less than pure hell. I refused to take calls from my wife, and for the first 3 days, she called me every hour on the hour. She must have taken the week off because she couldn't make phone calls from the shop floor and had to be on the floor all day. She left countless messages all begging me to call her. I deleted every one of them. After those 3 days, my mother, mother-in-law, both daughters, and Katie's sister all begged me to talk to her. They all said it wasn't as bad as I thought, but every time I asked them if she cheated on me, they didn't answer. They all knew she had. They just wouldn't admit it. I stopped answering any calls from everyone. I told my daughters I'd speak to them, but their mother was not to be brought up. I had to hang up on them twice before they believed I was serious. At the end of the week, I visited with an attorney. A simple split down the middle was all I wanted. She could have the house until the girls moved out. We would sell it then. My attorney said I could get more than half of the house proceeds based on my contribution to the down payment and monthly payment being larger than Katie's contribution, but I told him just to split it evenly. I thought alimony or maintenance was a foregone conclusion, but it turns out that since my wife makes plenty of money to support herself, I wouldn't have to pay her anything. That was the best news I'd had in a while. I wouldn't have to pay her to screw her lover. The only fly in the ointment was that I didn't have proof of her adultery. The judge might not allow it and could downgrade it to irreconcilable differences, and I would have to prove we tried to make it work. I would take my chances. With my attorney preparing to file the divorce, life went on. There would be no forced mediation or counseling. There would be no lawsuits for alienation of affection. There would be no long drawn-out battle. The split was fair, and any judge could see that with a blindfold on. Nothing is that easy, though. What she could do was fight. When she was served the papers, she unleashed the entire barrage of the family against me again. It turns out that she only screwed the kid one time on that Friday before my birthday, or that's what she convinced everyone was what happened. I was branded as the bad guy because I wouldn't let her explain, as if any explanation would be acceptable. My mother basically called me a wimp because I wouldn't fight for my marriage. My mother-in-law told me we were even because I was breaking my vows too by not staying with her in the worst times. My daughters told me I needed to stay with the family because they would be scarred for life by our divorce. It was surreal. I did nothing wrong yet I was being blamed for the divorce. Things hit the fan when I had my daughters give me saliva for the DNA test. They refused until I lied to them and told them it was an order of the court. Katie wrote me a letter that was mailed to my store. I read it, and it said that she got caught up in the kid's attention to her. I say kid because the bastard was only 21. They only had sex one time in the back seat of his car. Like him being a dud was supposed to make it all okay? She also said that when I caught her in her car with the guy, it was to tell him privately to never speak to her again. It didn't matter. She cheated on me once, and once was enough. The nice thing was that since she gave me the letter, I didn't have to prove adultery for the divorce. She did it on her own. It meant that I wouldn't have to file for irreconcilable differences and prove we tried to make it work. Karma was finally on my side. She tried to fight the divorce, but when the judge saw my offered terms and her letter confirming the adultery, he approved it. I would be divorced in 60 days. So there I was, a man alone on an island of desolation. Because I refused to talk to her, I was branded as immature and a jerk. It got so bad my mother and my daughter stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I was on the side of righteousness, and if they didn't like it, too bad. I called my daughters every other day religiously. They never answered, but I left voicemails telling them what was going on with me and asking what was going on in their lives. I wouldn't let them blame me for not being on speaking terms. I continued to make every effort and reached out to them no matter if they wanted me to or not. One thing that changed was I began to have coffee with Missy on Sundays. It started innocently enough when we bumped into each other at a local coffee shop. She and Mia lived in the neighborhood and were out for a walk. I invited them to join me and filled her in on my misery while Mia watched cartoons on my iPad. "I'm sure your daughters will come around, Bill," she said. "They are young and impressionable and are living with your wife. There's no telling what nonsense she's put into their heads." I hope you're right. I just hope they aren't too far gone. I miss them like hell. The following week, I went to the same shop at the same time and was reading when I heard, "Hey, stranger." I smiled and invited them to join me again. "Is this normal for you, or are you stalking me?" she asked with a smile. "No, I live nearby and I like to have a cup of coffee and read on Sunday mornings. It's kind of lonely at home, so I come here." She sipped her cup and we chatted about the neighborhood until we parted. It wasn't a conscious decision to meet every Sunday, but we did. I enjoyed her company and little Mia was a delight. On the day the divorce became final, I knocked on my old home's front door. My wife answered it, and it was clear she'd been crying. She didn't say a word. She just motioned me inside. "Are the girls home?" I asked. "They are watching a musical at the school." "I know why you're here. I expected you to come over today." "Is that so?" I asked with a smirk. "You waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "I knew that you'd beg and plead and tug on my heartstrings trying to reconcile, and I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, and there is no way I will forgive you." "Darn it, Bill. It was one time, one bad mistake. Why couldn't you forgive me? Why couldn't you find a way to stay with me? Didn't you love me as much as I loved you all these years?" I laughed. "Were you loving me when you were flirting with your dad? Were you loving me when you had him in your mouth? Were you loving me when you cheated? Were you loving me when you avoided me all weekend and left me alone on my birthday? If that's your idea of love, you're beyond help." "I never wanted this to happen," she sobbed. "I never wanted a cheating wife either, but here we are." She gasped and started to speak before I cut her off. "Katie, not only did you break my heart, but you turned my mother and my daughters against me. I will never forgive you for that either. That's your fault for being unreasonable." I got pissed and said, "If you don't get my mother and my daughters to apologize to me and make it right, I will tell every man you date that you are a cheating loser. I will make it a point to ruin every relationship you ever try to have in the future because you ruined mine. I don't want anyone else." Wrong answer. I guess I'll just have to find other ways to hurt and embarrass you. I stood to leave, and she grabbed my arm. "It's not my fault. You can't blame me." "Oh no. Did I cheat on you?" "Didn't think so. You know what really sucks? You're letting your daughters grow up to believe it's acceptable to cheat on their husbands. Because of your behavior, they're going into adulthood believing you are the saint and I'm the sinner, and it's okay, because it was one time." "Well, screw that. I'm not going down because some kid made you feel sexy." I pulled her arm off mine and said, "Rot in hell for throwing our marriage away." I left her crying in my wake and didn't feel sad about it. A few weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. "Got a second, Bill?" "Of course, come on in." I frowned when she shut the door, expecting something bad was coming. "Bill, does the company have a rule against dating other employees?" I hated her asking me that. I was hoping to get to ask her out. It looked like I was too late. "No, we have a strong sexual harassment policy. That policy protects just about everything a failed relationship between coworkers could damage, and if two people can't work together after a breakup, that's their fault, not the company's." "Good. That's what I was hoping for," she said as she placed a folded piece of paper on my desk. "What's this?" I asked. "My address and phone number. I expect you over for dinner tomorrow night. Mia will be joining us." I smiled and agreed. "Good. You're a good man, Bill. You deserve to be happy, and I'd like to give you a second chance at happiness." She dashed out of my office with a cute spring in her step, and I was looking forward to our dinner. "Hi. It's Dad checking in. I hope all is well with you and your sister. Usual stuff in my world, except a woman at work asked me out to dinner. Well, anyway, I love you and miss you. Please call me soon. Bye." I knew leaving that message would cause some issues, but I still didn't care. I had to move on, and I was excited about Missy stepping up to the plate as she did. Missy was a beautiful woman with an even more beautiful personality. Her daughter was precocious and adorable, and I already met her parents. I felt like I was finally ahead in the game. It was only 15 minutes later when Katie texted me. "I can't believe you're dating already. You're a real jerk." I laughed when I read it. I never realized how delusional she was. To think I would sit and stew over her was insane. Maybe some guys would lament and mourn the loss of their marriage at the hands of a cheating wife, but that wasn't me. I was young enough at 41 to find love again. Hell, I was young enough to have more kids if I wanted. That was something to think about. Missy was in her early 30s. She may want more children down the road. I knew it was too early to have those thoughts, but as a single mother, those things were probably at the top of Missy's potential suitor's traits. I'm sure she was looking for a husband, not a plaything. Although I certainly was not opposed to being her plaything. I hadn't been laid in months. The next evening I showered and shaved after work and dressed casually. I looked in the mirror and didn't mind what I saw. I was in good shape with no spare tire or love handles. I had a full head of brown hair with no gray hair peeking through yet. I had a great job that paid well, and I had money in the bank. I figured I wasn't a bad catch for any woman, let alone a younger woman like Missy. Then I realized that I had no idea how to date someone. When you're married, you're always together, and you know everything about each other. There was no issue with holding hands or kissing. When you got home from a night out, you knew sex was on the table. There was comfort in the status quo. Jesus, I had to learn how to have sex all over again. I had to hope that the next woman I had sex with liked the same stuff or at least communicated well. I feared I wasn't ready to date, and I regretted jumping into the dating scene so quickly. I knocked on her townhouse door with a bottle of wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal. I figured it wouldn't hurt to get on Mia's good side. When she opened the door, I was blown away by what I saw. Her curly red hair was down over her shoulders, and she had the perfect amount of makeup on. She wore a billowy sundress that stopped about 4 inches above her knees, showcasing her wonderful legs. She was barefoot, and her toes were painted hot pink, matching her fingernails. She laughed and asked, "Do I pass inspection?" "God, yes," I said before I could take it back. She laughed harder and took the flowers and wine from me. "Mia's watching TV. Go ahead and say hi. She's gonna love the bear." She wandered off into the kitchen, and I knelt next to Mia. "Hi, sweetie, I brought you a bear." She cautiously looked up at me and then lit the room up with her smile. She held out her hands for the bear and ran off to show Missy once she got it into her arms. She brought back some good memories of Jenny and Jill at that age. I realized how long it had been since I spoke to them, and I missed them even more. "What's wrong?" Missy asked, snapping me from my thoughts. I forced a smile and said nothing. "I was just thinking of my daughters when they were Mia's age." "Are things that bad now?" she asked. "They still aren't talking to me at all. Katie turned them against me, and I can't bring them around. I still try though. I leave them messages every other day, and one stop. 'I'm sorry, Bill. I know it's horrible for you.' Every day I know they listen to my messages though. I told them about our date tonight, and Katie texted me to tell me I was a jerk for moving on so quickly. 'I'm sorry.' It's not too quick, is it?" She bit her lip and looked damn cute doing it. "Maybe," I said honestly, "but I'm happy to find that out with you." She smiled and took my hand. "Dinner is ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce." "Sounds great." "Oh, I have garlic bread too. So you have to be ready to deal with that later when we're on the couch kissing." Mia giggled, and I stood shocked at Missy being so forward. She saw my discomfort and said, "Bill, we're both adults, and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of man you are, and there's not much getting to know you needed to know. I like you a lot. You're about to be a hot commodity, and I'm staking my claim early." "Hot commodity?" I asked. "Yep. You have no idea all of the scuttlebutt news of your divorce has caused in the store. Honey, you coming on the market, so to speak, has many of the single ladies' attention. You're a handsome man in good shape. You're smart, stable, and we all know how you feel about fidelity." I was feeling pretty good when I sat down at her table. "So, I'm jumping in line early," she finished. I took her hand and squeezed it. "I like you too." Mia, not wanting to be left out, said, "Sketty's my favorite." "I like Sketty too." "The slurpier the better," I said. I saw the can of Parmesan cheese on the table and added, "And you gotta have extra stinky cheese." She giggled and said, "It's not stinky cheese. It's Parma. Stinky cheese," I said, bringing the can to my nose, pretending it was the worst smell ever. Woo, that's extra stinky cheese. Missy shook her head as I handed the can to Mia. She smelled it, shrugged her shoulders, and poured a generous amount onto her spaghetti. We kept the dinner conversation light. I asked about Mia's preschool class and her friends. She had no problem chirping away, telling me every detail she could remember. I thoroughly enjoyed the talk. After a while, I realized Missy wasn't talking. She had a big grin and was merely watching me and her daughter banter back and forth with each other. Eventually, she started gathering plates and I said, "Let me help." "Oh no, she hasn't told you about her favorite TV shows yet." She laughed as Mia started filling me in on all the best kids shows. After putting Mia to bed, Missy returned and sat next to me on the couch. I handed her a glass of wine, and she sighed contentedly as she lifted her feet onto the ottoman. I love being a mom, but sometimes this is the best part of the day for me. Instinctively, I put my arm around her. As she leaned into me, I said, "It's worse with two." "I bet it was. Do you think your girls will come around?" "I hope so," I answered pensively. "I'm putting forth all of the efforts right now, but it's still raw for them." She turned and kissed my cheek. "You're a great father, just don't give up the fight for them." She set her glass down and sat back. "Bill, I've already told you I like you a lot, and I'm too old to play the will we or won't we game. I would like to continue to see you, and that includes inviting you into my bedroom." I was going to tell her that we don't have to, but she lifted her shush finger. "I know you want to be a gentleman and all that, but that's not necessary. What I'm trying to say is I don't want to be your buddy or friend with benefits. I'm warning you now that I am looking for an exclusive relationship. I have a daughter to think about and honestly, she needs a daddy as much as I want a husband." I tried to speak again, but once more got shushed. This conversation usually ends with the guy picking up and running. I don't think you're that way, but I'm giving you an out. If you want to sow your oats and test out the single life, I'm not your girl. If you want to see if we have a shot for the long haul, then I'm your woman. "Wow," I said. "Did you prepare that speech, or was it off the cuff?" She frowned, misinterpreting my feelings. "Missy, like you said, we've known each other in a working relationship for 3 years. These past few weeks of having coffee together have been very nice. I'm a family man. It's all I've ever been. I don't know how to be single, and the idea of dating scares the hell out of me. If my wife could have kept her legs closed, I'd still be a happily married family man. No, I don't want to play the field." She smiled and took my hand. I continued, "You are beautiful, smart, and you make a mean spaghetti." She laughed and slapped my shoulder playfully. "I'd like to be your boyfriend. Consider me locked in towards building something good for all of us, including your little girl." We didn't make love that night. As much as I wanted to take her right there on her couch, I felt taking things slow would be best. She practically professed her love for me and was coming on very strongly. I thought slowing things down would be better for my comfort level. I got a gift from the gods when I received an application for a manager slot I had open. I never got the name of the punk kid that ended my marriage, so I couldn't exact any amount of revenge on him, but when he showed up to interview for my overnight manager job, I recognized him immediately. I knew he'd never recognize me, but he might have recognized my name, so I had and interview him and hire him on the spot. On his second night of work, I waited in the parking lot for him to begin his shift. I walked up to his 90s beater car and placed a 40-inch TV I bought at a competitor in the back seat. We carried the same model, and I happened to know one of them was conveniently misplaced in the stock room. In the morning, I timed my arrival to coincide with his shift ending. I walked him out to his car, idly chatting about what he thought of his team of guys. When we got there, I noticed the TV in his back seat and pretended to be shocked. "Jeff, did you buy the TV before your shift?" "We aren't open yet." "No, Bill, that's not mine. I don't know how it got there." "Jeff, I think we need to go back into the store." "Bill, you have to believe me. Check the cameras." I shook my head and said, "All right, bring the TV." We walked back into the store, and the kid was scared to death. I thought he was going to cry at one point. We didn't have overnight security because with the store closed overnight and having a night crew in the store, we didn't need it. What we had were cameras everywhere, and there was only one place the security cameras could be turned off. Only managers had a key to that room. There was a camera facing the door to the room, but it was above a doorway to the stairwell. I told corporate security about that issue a few years before, but they never rectified it. That made it easy to open the stairwell door, reach up, and cover the camera with a piece of black tape. Then I turned off the security camera system. Well, technically, I unplugged the computer that ran the system. When I walked him into the room and he saw the computer wasn't running, he panicked and kept pleading his innocence as I called the police per policy. When all was said and done, the kid got a conviction for a minor felony and got no jail time. I had hoped he'd get a couple of months, but it wasn't an expensive enough TV. He had to perform a ton of community service and pay a fine, which surprisingly was more than I paid for the TV. With a felony on his record, he'd also have a hard time finding a job in retail. That made me happier, but still wasn't worth the risk I took. I did get a security upgrade from corporate out of it, which included parking lot cameras. They were long overdue. He was so stupid, he never figured out that I did it. He tried to blame the crew for setting him up, but couldn't prove anything. They didn't miss him when I fired. On a brisk Saturday morning, a week after my dinner with Missy, I saw her waiting in her car to stay warm. After I parked next to her, she met me at my door and greeted me with a nice kiss. "Are we still on for dinner tonight?" she asked. "Absolutely." "Good. I've got something special I'm making for us. You wouldn't want to miss it." "I wouldn't." "Is this the tramp?" Katie asked from behind me, cutting me off. "Excuse me?" Missy shouted, her claws fully unsheathed. "Katie, what do you want?" I asked, annoyed. "You've been trying to reach you. Did you block my number?" "Yes. After your 30 texts about me being a bastard for moving on, I had enough." "What do you want?" "I want to talk about the girls. We need to figure college out. They can go wherever they want. I've made sure the money is there for them. I'd like to be involved, but since you poison them against me, they won't speak to me. They are afraid you won't pay for school." "Of course I'll pay for it. I still love them, even though because you can't keep your legs closed, I lost them in the divorce." Missy laughed. Katie glared at her and said, "It's not my fault you couldn't forgive me for one slip." "Oh, one slip?" "It was only once because you weren't discreet about it. I confronted you immediately." "Whatever. You should still be my husband. We should still be a family." "You're delusional. You cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and my mother. I swear to you, you'd better never date a man and I find out about it. You'll never see a second date. No one wants to date a cheating slut unless they know your reputation and are just looking for an easy lay." I turned and walked towards the store. I heard shouting behind me and turned to find Missy, having Katie backed up against the car with her finger in her face. "Stay the hell away from my man." "You threw him away and I picked him up." I ran back and pulled her away. "Stop, Missy. She's not worth the trouble." "You heard me, woman." She shouted at Katie before turning and walking towards the store. "Please leave, Katie. We're done, and that's your fault. Yours and yours alone." I left her sobbing by the cars. I ran to catch up to my huffing Missy and took her hand. She looked up and smiled at me as she slowed down. "I'm sorry, Bill." I guess I was being too territorial. "Oh no. I like having women fighting over me in the parking lot. It's great for my ego." We laughed and went inside to get some work done. Later that morning, I got a call from my mom. When I answered, she grunted, "Billy, I'm..." She didn't finish and I heard a thud, but the call didn't end. I hung up and called back to no answer. I called 911 to have them send an ambulance to her house, and they told me a call had already come in from her residence. I feared the worst and told, and to cover me as I had to go. She understood, and as I ran through the store, I blew past Missy, who shouted after me. I ignored her and ran straight to my car. When I got to my mom's house, the ambulance was pulling away, so I followed it. When I walked up to the opening back doors, I found out she was gone before the ambulance arrived at the hospital. She must have lost consciousness when we were on the phone. I cried as I sat in the lobby of the emergency room. I sat there alone, thinking of the last thing my mom said to me. What was she going to say? Would it have been, I'm in trouble? I'm having a heart attack. I'm sorry. My phone rang and it was Missy. Hey, my mom just died. Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry. Yeah, thanks. I'm afraid I won't be good company tonight. No, I'm going to be with you. You need me. Please let me come over. Okay. Yeah, I said. I didn't want to be alone and I was glad she was willing to be with me. I'm on my way home. Meet me there after you get off. Okay, see you soon. I ended the call and walked out to my car. Instead of driving home, I went to my old house. I needed to tell my girls whether they wanted to see me or not. When I pulled up, I saw both girls' cars in the driveway and sighed. I never imagined the first words we would speak to each other being news like this. I didn't care that I didn't live there anymore. I keyed the passcode into the garage door opener and walked inside. Katie's car wasn't there, and I was glad about that. I don't think I was in the frame of mind to see her. The living room and kitchen were empty, so I went upstairs to the bedrooms. Dad, Jill shouted as I walked into her room. What do you want? Jenny shrieked as she came in behind me. Did you come to beg? Well, you can go too. Grandma had a heart attack and died this morning, I said, cutting her off. They both gasped. I just thought I should tell you that in person. I'll go to hell now. I walked out and closed the door behind me. I heard Jenny yell for me to wait, but I ran out to my car and drove off. I went to the little lake where I'd spent so much happy time with the girls. It was too cold for paddle boats, but the water was starting to thaw and was very peaceful. I sat on the picnic bench and cried again. That time it was for the loss of my daughters as much as my mother. The vitriol in Jenny's voice told me that I wasn't wanted in her life. She didn't have to tell me to go to hell. Her tone said it all for her. I wondered if I'd made a mistake somewhere along the way. Not with Katie, but with the girls. What did I do that was so wrong to make them hate me so much? Katie was the one that destroyed our marriage. Why couldn't my daughters understand that? I don't know how long I sat there, but I heard someone walk up. I spun around and it was Katie and the girls. How did you find me here? I asked, after turning around to look out at the lake again. You didn't disconnect or find a phone app sync, Katie said. Bill, I'm sorry about your mom. Yeah? I spat. Sorry for her death. Or are you sorry that you turned her against me and she died without us reconciling? She didn't say anything. Leave me alone. I can't deal with your crap right now, I continued. I'll never forgive you for what you've done to me. The last words we spoke were her telling me she wouldn't speak to me again until I manned up and dropped the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me when she hung up on me. I'm so sorry, Bill, for everything. I heard her walk away and Jenny said, Daddy, we're sorry too. Please forgive us. I turned and they both lunged at me to hug me. We cried into each other's arms for what seemed like an eternity. It's not my fault, girls. Why can't you see that what your mother did is the reason we aren't together anymore? We're sorry, Dad, Jill said. We just thought that you should forgive her. She loves you. It's so obvious. Not enough to stay faithful to me, Jill. I'm sorry, girls. I'm so sorry. We hugged some more as Katie watched from the warmth of her car. Girls, I need you so much. You'll be off to college soon and I'll miss you. We're wasting so much time. We get it, Dad, Jenny said. We won't shut you out anymore, Jill added. I wish your grandma would have had a chance to do the same. Dad, can we come with you? We haven't seen your new house. Maybe we could get a pizza. Of course, tell your mother and let's go. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Missy's car. I'd forgotten she was coming over. Girls, it looks like you're going to meet Missy. Is she your girlfriend? They asked in unison, making me laugh. Yeah, well, I mean, we just started seeing each other. Look at him blush, Jenny. It's so cute. They jumped out of the car and were at Missy's door in a flash. They peppered her with questions and I could see Missy had no idea what was happening. Girls, let her be. Move it inside and I'll introduce you all. They kissed my cheek and bounced inside my garage while I walked over to a shell-shocked Missy. Sorry about that, I said as she opened her door. She smiled brightly and kissed my cheek. Your daughters? Come on, let's go get you formally introduced. I wish I'd known, honey. I must look a mess. I laughed and said, you're fine. They are gonna love you. Jenny, Jill, I'd like to introduce you to Missy. They hugged her. Jenny, being brash as usual, said, "You're super hot." Jill jumped in and said, "Way to go, Dad." Missy laughed. I was too shocked to say anything. "Hey, let's do a quick tour of the house, and then I need to sort some things out for Grandma services. Bill, I'll order some pizzas while you show them around." "Sounds good, honey." You read my mind. Ah, the girls cooed. I shook my head as Missy smiled. I decided I'd wait until the next morning to make the calls to spread the word about my mom. I would put an obituary in for Monday's paper and I'd post the service details on Facebook after visiting the funeral home on Sunday. After dinner, we sat and told Missy stories about my mom for hours. My girls, not so innocently, put in some embarrassing stories about me for Missy's benefit. It wasn't my fault the pier was wet and I fell in the lake, I swear. Before I knew it, it was after 10. "Girls, time got away from me and it's getting late." They frowned and asked, "Can we spend the night?" "I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet." "I tell you what, I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out to breakfast, okay? If you're up to it, I could use some help figuring out what to do with Grandma's stuff too." "Sure, Dad, we'll help with whatever you need." "Thanks." "Missy, want to go for a ride or do you have to get home to Mia?" "She's staying with my parents." Jill jumped in. "Who's Mia?" "Mia is my 4-year-old daughter." They both squealed and Jenny said, "Oh my God, I can't wait to meet her." Missy laughed at their excitement and said, "Someday soon, I promise." "All right, let's head out." "They're wonderful girls," Missy said, as we sat on the couch shortly after returning to my house. "I'm glad you were able to get back together with them." I sighed. "Me too. I just wish it wouldn't have taken my mom's passing away." She snuggled into my arms and I fell asleep holding her. When I woke in the morning, she had us covered in a blanket and was still snuggled into me. I missed having that kind of closeness with someone. I kissed the top of her head and said, "I'm sorry I fell asleep on you." She moaned as she stretched. "It's okay, baby. You had an extremely emotional day. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast?" "Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning." "Of course, my daughters will love her." Since we had to get Mia, I asked my daughters to meet us at IHOP. When I walked in holding Mia's hand, my girls rushed to her. In seconds, Mia was in their arms being twirled in the air and then they tickled her and smothered her with kisses. She was squealing and giggling the entire time with a huge smile right up until she shouted, "I gotta pee." The girls in unison said, "We'll take her," and bounced off to the bathroom. "I don't know, Missy. Do you think they'll get along?" I asked with a grin. She slapped my shoulder playfully and kissed my cheek. "I hope they will for many years to come," she said. She was thinking pretty long term and we had technically only been on one date. It was slightly unnerving, but I was sure I'd get over that feeling. As we ate, Mia and my daughters chatted nonstop about anything and everything. It was obvious to my eyes that Mia loved to talk and not just about herself. She asked so many questions about my daughters' lives. I think even my girls were surprised. My daughters were the neighborhood babysitters, so dealing with small children was their forte. They knew all of the kids' shows and movies and had Mia eating out of the palm of their hands. They also got along well with Missy. There was no animosity, nor any display of anger in my dating her, which shocked me. They refused to talk with me for months after my divorce, but as soon as they meet my new girlfriend, they were BFFs. I didn't understand that, and I'd have to see if I could get some sort of explanation from the girls for it. After making dozens of phone calls, starting the long process of cleaning out my mom's house, and after a visit to the funeral home, I was finally able to sit and relax. The girls had come back to my house for dinner, while Missy and Mia had gone their separate ways from us after breakfast. Missy thought it would be too emotional for us and wanted to avoid the discomfort of Mia being there questioning everything as we sorted through my mom's house. "Dad, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny asked out of the blue. We've only seen each other a couple of times outside of work. It's a bit early to call it love." "Okay, Dad," Jill said, as if I were an idiot. "Have you seen those old-timey cartoons where the girls' eyes flutter and they fold their hands next to their cheek as they look at their prince?" I nodded as I bit into a slice of pizza. "Well, she practically has hearts floating around her head as she looks at you and bats her eyes," Jill said. Before I could deny she loved me, they looked at each other, turned to me and said, "We like her." I went from being happy to be seeing my daughters, to anger. I dropped my slice onto my plate, wiped my hands, and went to the sink. I was stalling, trying to calm down as I leaned on the counter facing away from them. "Dad," Jenny asked, "girls, how can you break my heart for all this time and now sit there and tell me you like my girlfriend? What did I do to you to make you think it was okay to shut me out, to ignore me, to tell me to go to hell the first time I see you in ages? What did I do? Do you know how many times I cried after leaving you a message I knew you didn't care about getting? Mom made us." "What?" I shouted. Jill answered, "It started when Mom told us if you thought you were losing us too, you would get back with her and we could be a family again. We're so sorry." I turned around and Jenny jumped up to hug me when she saw the tear on my cheek. "Daddy, forgive us. After that didn't work, she told us that you abandoned us and weren't going to pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She told us the messages you left were just a ploy for you to use in your divorce, to make it look like you were being a good guy for the judge's benefit. And you believe that? Dad, how would you react while sitting with her day after day, hearing her defend her one-time mistake against 20 years of love? We believed that you were being unreasonable. Was I? Would you allow your boyfriend to cheat on you?" I got no answer. "Where is the line drawn?" I asked forcefully. "1 time, 2, 5, answer me." They started crying and we group hugged. Their embrace calmed me immediately and I felt horrible. "I'm sorry, girls. I've missed you so much." After they each expressed their love for me, I said, "It's time to get you home. You've got school tomorrow. Don't forget to have Mom tell them about the wake and funeral. You'll need time off this week." We hugged once more and I watched them drive away with a warm heart. I looked to the sky and said, "You didn't have to go to get me the girls back, Mom, but thanks. I'll miss you." Wakes are difficult for me because I always felt uncomfortable sitting in a room with a dead body. My mom's was especially hard. I made my way over to the coffin several times throughout the day and looked at her. She looked peaceful. I was glad she'd be seeing my dad again. He had died several years before from cancer. He wanted a different kind of service with no wake. He felt like I do that it was strange for people to hang out with a corpse. Mom had hers all planned out. I guess as one ages, they think about that kind of thing. She even had her coffin picked out. All I had to do was set up the time and day and deal with little details of the room setup and service. I was glad she'd done it. I was standing in the front of the room talking with one of her friends when Katie and my girls walked in. My daughters greeted me with warm, tearful hugs and Katie thankfully left me alone. After she said a prayer, Katie put something into the casket and walked to the back of the room where she sat alone. I looked to see what she put in there and it was a photo of me and Katie with our arms around my mom. She was holding each of our babies in her arms and had a mile-wide smile across her face. I picked up the picture which she had tucked in the side and placed it reverently next to her hands. It was the first time I cried that day. Later, the minister wanted to begin the service. Katie hadn't left her spot at the back of the room. She engaged everyone. You can't be married into a family for as long as she was without getting to know people, and they all loved her. The protocol was for the immediate family to sit in the front row of chairs. My girls were to my right and Misty was on my left, but it didn't feel right. I stood and turned. I saw Katie still in the back of the room wiping the tears from her eyes. It felt wrong to me. My mom wouldn't have wanted that. Katie was as much her daughter as she was my wife. I walked to the back of the room. With everyone seated, waiting for the service to begin, I was noticed and all-eyed followed me. I extended my hand to Katie. "Come to the front. You don't have to hide back here." She started sobbing and hugged me. She whispered thank you as she released me. We walked to the front of the room and my Uncle John gave up his seat for her, which was next to my daughter. "You're a good man, Bill," Missy whispered after kissing my cheek. It was the strangest feeling I'd ever had, holding Missy's hand with my ex-wife just feet away. I prayed that I wouldn't regret it and have an issue with them later. As we wrapped up the day, I was saying goodbye to the last remaining visitors when Katie walked up to me. With Missy at my side, I was wondering what Katie would do. I'd hoped she wouldn't start a fight out of respect for my mother. "Bill, thank you for including me with the family today. It meant more than you could ever know. She loved you as a daughter. It was only right. Oh, that reminds me. You can ride in the limousine with us and the girls tomorrow if you'd like. She grabbed me into a hug and cried. I felt Missy's hand touch my lower back possessively and started to fear a cat fight was coming. Well, Katie said, breaking the hug, if you don't need anything from me, I'll head home. I shook my head no, and she smiled briefly at Missy. I'm glad you're here for him. You may not know this, but he was a mama's boy. It's soon going to hit him pretty hard that she's gone. With that, she turned and left the room. Missy gave me a side hug and said, let's get you home. I dropped my keys onto my valet and walked into the kitchen. Thankful the day was over. Missy sat at the table and accepted a cold beer from me. I think everything with Katie went better than you expected. You handled it well, she said, as I enjoyed my cold Sam Adams. Yeah, I'm glad. I really expected her to start something with you. Well, I bet the girls helped in that regard. We just have to make it past tomorrow, and we'll be fine. I hoped she was right. I don't know why I had a nagging feeling about Katie not handling interacting with Missy. Well, I suppose I was just paranoid. Will you stay with me tonight? I asked. She smiled and took my hand. You couldn't kick me out if you tried. We didn't make love, but she spooned with me and it was the best night's sleep I had since the divorce. You're watching me like a hawk. I'm not going to abuse your gift by starting an argument, Katie said as we waited for the prayer to begin. I know that I lied. It's just uncomfortable for me. She snorted and asked, how do you think it feels for me? I'm the pariah here. I frowned. No one thinks that of you, especially not today. I'm truly sorry, Bill. I wish I could make it never have happened. I wish. She started crying and hurried off to the bathroom. It's hard on all of us, Bill, my mother's friend Jean said, patting my shoulder. Your mom was a great lady and we'll all miss her. I kissed her cheek and thanked her. Glad that Katie had the cover of my mom for her outburst of tears. After the funeral, we were being seated at my mom's favorite Polish restaurant for the luncheon. It was a packed room and Katie looked uncomfortable as she searched for a seat. I walked over to her once more and led her by the hand to the table where I sat with Missy and my daughters. Katie, we're always going to be family, regardless of the divorce. Where we sit, you will always be welcome. A tear slid down her cheek as she sat and thanked me. I don't know when I got over it, but it felt like I was finally over the hurt she caused. Life went on. The girls went to college and Skyped me every week. Missy and I are still together and I'm pretty close to popping the question. Katie and I don't speak often, but we are cordial. She is moving on as well, dating one of the girls' friends' divorced dad. He's a good guy. I hope it works for them. Some would say I should have forgiven her for a one-time slip, but I just don't have it in me. That may make me a bad guy in some minds, but I can live with myself. If you found this story as unbelievable as I did, please like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales. See